As the country celebrates its 77th Independence Day, we clearly have much to be proud of. India is today the 5th largest economy and is on course to become the 3rd largest by the end of this decade. Besides this, India is the largest producer in the world of milk, cotton and spices, and the 2nd largest producer of coal, textiles, food grains, horticulture and internet users. But let us also sober down. We also rank 132 out of 191 countries when it comes to per capita income, when it comes to life expectancy and number of years of schooling. So as we stand on the threshold of our 77th year, what should our policy priorities be to get to that 3rd largest economy faster? I have with me someone who has been there, done that, watched and shepherded the Indian financial sector for the last 30 years at least, Mr. KV Kamath, Chairman of the NABFID, the organization that finances India's infrastructure now, or will shortly, and of course someone who has been Chairman of ICICI Bank as well. Mr. Kamath, thank you very much.
Thank you, Latha.
Okay, so let me start, 77 years and many achievements that we can be proud of. What do you think is our best successes?
I think our best success has been as a country the last 8 to 10 years. Particularly the movement to make finance virtually available at your fingertips across the country to every citizen of India. And that is consequent to a few things that were started earlier, that is the India Stack, including Aadhaar, and then Jan Dhan, post 2014, and then driving data availability, and then driving UPI, then enabling the entire system to modernize, so that it is able to reach the most remotest part of the country. Now, to me, this is, I would say, the achievement that really needs to be heralded for a reason. That ultimately, it is access to finance which transforms lives. So this transformational happened, I would say, in the 70th year onward, or somewhere around that of our...
Yeah, fair enough, sir. Actually spoken like a finance man and speaking about the democratization of finance, as it were. Okay, then let me turn the question on its head. Where do you think is our biggest failure or failures?
I think the biggest failure was probably staying with what I'd call one-size-fit-all economic policy for probably 2-3 decades longer than what it was. My view is that post-independence, there was a need to build the foundation, and there wasn't enough strength in the private sector to actually do this. But sometime in the 60s, when the private sector started building its own ability in terms of staying on its feet and striving for more, you actually ran into a bottleneck in terms of ability to build things at scale and so on.
Yes.
So you had, I would think, almost 2 decades which were lost, which then where you try to do it through the reform process, but then there was 10 years of pain. So really, when you look at the story over 76 years or 77 years, this story is a story of around from post-90, 10 years of pain, and then reform started and reform being driven. So I think it's a story of the last 25 years.
That's true. We ran into licenses and imports and narrow walls everywhere. But are we getting into that trap again? The latest, it's not yet policy, it's still discussion stage, but restriction on imports of laptops, and looks like it will get into printers and other electronic equipment. Should we beware, or is there some sense in this?
No, I think we're not getting into that trap. The way I look at it is we have opened the doors, and it's very difficult now to selectively close doors or close doors. So I would think that the strategy on laptops is an extension of, I would say, India can do it. And I think that has to be our mantra. India can do it. Just 2-3 years back, we did the same thing with certain defense items. It's not my area of expertise. But I used to always say, for many, many years, that this sort of equipment we should be able to make. In the sense that critically important equipment, but let's say they are heavy trucks. We ought to be able to make it. Why do we need to build it? Encourage our local entrepreneurs and do it. And in 2 years, every single manufacturer of automobiles in the country or heavy trucks in the country, has come out with defense equipment.
Yes.
I would think that the government got confidence on this with the success of the entire electronics package.
Yes.
To say cell phones now need to be added. Now, what is a laptop today? Basically, I would say the cell phone is much more complex than the laptop.
Yes, this is just a motherboard.
To me, this is a technology which is 20 years old. So I think we could easily do it. Previously,
when we went into import substitution, we ran into becoming uncompetitive. Our productivity was much lower. We were not of global scale. And that's what 91 did. It brought us to the global scale. Will we err on the side of...
No, and I'll tell you why. See, because I've lived through those years.
Yes, you did.
Those years, I think the policy was, I would say, to allow only small units in, because you could distribute it across, geographies, people, licensing, and so on. But today, the government has understood the benefit of scale. And of course, those days also there was another problem, that there was no demand. The demand was limited. Today, you can build a demand at scale, because you have a large consuming market, which can stack up to any country in the world, and you can export. Previously, you basically had to export at the margin. Today, you can make a plant only for India, or only for exports, or a hybrid. So it's a completely different situation.
Demographic dividend. I mean, that's going to be the big kicker. Are you very confident that we will use this demographic dividend properly? Largest markets, we will be able to call the tune. Or do you worry that we will fritter it away because of the poor quality of demography?
No, I think demographic dividend, certainly we are already harvesting.
Yes.
And the demographic dividend is coming to us in a variety of ways, which has not been seen earlier elsewhere in other domains. And that is a generation which is young and which has access to many more things than the previous generation did. When you take one single metric by which they are better connected, it is the internet revolution and the connectivity. Would I have thought 5 years back that India would be the largest consumer of data in the world? No way. I would have said that it is not possible to overtake China in this period, but we have leapfrogged. So clearly, when the young demographic has got access to connectivity at an affordable rate, miracles happen. And this miracle has happened. Now, we are only staying with one metric, consumption of data. To me, that is not the metric to be looking at. To me, the metric to be looking at is what happens next, or what is this young generation able to do with connecting to the internet. I would think this our biggest achievement, technology and the whole the data-driven economy and connectivity, has opened up new dividend streams to that one demographic dividend that was there, say, 10 years back.
Just getting back to, since you brought the China comparison, I just wanted to tell you, you were there in ADB before you took over in India, and then you went back as BRICS Bank. Our comparison with China fares rather poorly. I mean, in terms of cars, there's I think something like 20, we are 1/10 the number of cars that they have. We are about 1/10 in terms of the per capita consumption of electricity. The comparisons are very poor. Although in 1990, we both started at the same per capita level. Now, 5.5x. So, where do you think we should change? Clearly, now they are in a hole.
We can put that in context because my ADB career, I started visiting China in 1988. And intermittently, along with this 5-year stint, till 2020. So I want, in a way, observed what has happened in those days. I can say clearly in 88, they were behind us in any metric that you could take.
Oh.
I think the inflection was actually the 90 to 2000 period when they opened up with the bank. And I visited that country during those years also. And as I was saying, we did not open up. So that started the first steps of opening up in 85 or 80s itself. By 85 it was catching steam but not visible. But the next 10 years they had the real blockbuster growth as it were. And in that time we were just setting our economic policy right by opening up. So we lost 15-20 years. And that lead has been difficult for us to make up. But again, now I would really look at incremental metric. And the incremental metric, the way I would look at it is per capita income China today into its purchasing power parity, our per capita income into its multiple, and what is the differential?
Then it is less than
18 billion and let's say 3.5 or heading towards 4 billion, so 4.5 times. But then purchasing power is probably far better than China. So really speaking, you are looking like a 3-4 trillion economy, and on this comparative metric is around a 12 trillion economy, threefold. And it's borne out by, you mentioned cars, that is a stock. But you take the flow of cars. We are producing now 3.5 million cars, if I'm not wrong. They are producing about 12 million cars. So basically it is
the gap is reducing.
Yeah, where they have gone ahead in the past is creating foundational capacity, whether it is steel, cement, and things like that. But here it's happening. If I see the capacity that was there when I started my career as head of ICICI, today in all these building blocks, there's a manifold change in terms of what has been set up. So we have now created the building blocks. And there is an ability to grow at speed in India because you've got clean balance sheets of the corporates. Most of their expansion they can fund themselves. Banks have ability to lend. The bond market has ability to fund you. So given this, I think we can now meet incremental growth at the pace that growth tells us, please put money in. And since lead times are 1.5 years, I think we stand to gain.
I have to take a break. But you brought me back to the finance argument. So more about how we are going to finance the development, especially at the bottom of the pyramid and at the infrastructure level after the break. Welcome back to this Independence Day special Indianomics. I have been speaking with veteran banker Mr. KV Kamath. Mr. Kamath, thank you very much for staying on. Well, let's discuss how do we finance this huge development ambitions that we have. As you have been pointing out practically in every answer you gave me earlier before the break, we have this big digital advantage now. Are you confident that we will be able to reach small sachets of finance to the bottom of the pyramid? Or do you think, there is still this problem of we don't have enough knowledge about them for due diligence?
You see, Latha, having started retail in a bank when there was no scoring at all, and you built your own scores, and you actually got advice on how to build a scoring system, and grew the business that way. I think today, with the way credit scoring is pervaded across the country, reaching credit to almost anyone in the country is easy. To add to this, I think other ways of scoring will develop, and they are already developing in other countries. Behavioral scoring. Now, some of these behavioral scoring we may not like to have, but others are certainly desirable. Plus, I would say adjacent areas to finance, not necessarily financial, behavior, which tells you your score. Now, has it reached to the absolute village level? I think it is quickly reaching. The moment you have a financial account and your transaction history is available and you have borrowed any product, you are going to be on somebody's radar. So I guess that if you are not there, we are going to get there very quickly, as I think every single individual ends up having an account. So I'm not worried about small packets of finance reaching remote areas. Just take the evolution of banks in India, and that will tell us the story. I remember in 2006-2007 in ICICI, we said our next horizon of growth is going to be rural India, and we mapped it. But a couple of years later, we said we can't execute on this because technology had not connected people. Now, today, technology has connected people, and that rural customer is folded in and embraced because you can now reach out to him and serve him and collect. So take the cost of disintermediation of microcredit. Those days, 24% lending rate, 12% is the operating cost. And then the rest 12% you to look after your actual fund cost plus margin, and of course credit losses, which are probably higher than normal. But today, the 12% has really become zero, because I was talking to a microcredit company just 2 days back. They said collection and lending both is virtually online.
So lending is absolutely online.
So you have brought the whole thing down to. So I would think that that mass is already being reached. Can you provide them more products? You should. Can you provide them, and help them meet all their needs? I think you will head towards that in the next few years, and that's the India opportunity. And that will also set you with the 3.5, 4 trillion economy heading to a 8 trillion economy. So I think these go hand in hand in the next few years.
Okay. Do you think any rules of financial organizations need to be rewritten? This 2007, even 2017, we were vociferously arguing that maybe public sector banks should be privatized. But now private sectors, both NBFC and banks have marched on. Do you think it's very important to rewrite the rules and unleash public sector?
I don't think we have to rewrite the rules for either the public sector or the private sector. What we now need to do is the banks themselves. This is not government policy. I think everyone needs to look at what does this new technology mean to me. Can I operate this technology in a much more elegant way than I'm doing today, at a significantly lower cost than I'm doing today, so that benefit goes to my customer? And I would believe the answer is yes. Today you can use technologies which have gone far beyond what was there, say, 25 years back, and even far beyond what was there 7 years back. And with the cloud, of course, has come in, SaaS has come in, and of course open source is driving all this. So there is a technological revolution which has already happened or happening at a great pace. The young startups are all taking advantage of it. I would think the established players in the financial system now have to take advantage of this. No, rules need not be rewritten, but this is a part of an evolutionary process. I hope both sets of competitors compete and are there to serve India.
I hear two kinds of arguments on retail. There are one set of people who say, retail is getting overcrowded. At one point in time, it was only the ICICIs and the HDFC banks who were hugely in retail. The public sector banks were mostly financing large corporates, project finance, infrastructure, etc. Now everyone, and NBFCs, and MFIs, and fintechs are in retail. The big fear is that those who are new to retail have not seen a bad cycle. So do you think there is a hiccup?
See, we need to understand why the bad cycle will come and what are the internal risk mitigating measures in place, whether it is capital or other safety measures. So I'm sure that is something that the regulator is very carefully watching, and opening up of competition to all will be calibrated. I'm currently only talking about the demand. So from the demand point of view, despite the increases that we say, I don't think we have comprehended fully or put down in a piece of paper what happens when an economy goes from 4 to 8 trillion, and in the space of next 8 years, let us say. Particularly from the point of view, it is not a linear equation. That was doubling. This probably will quadruple.
Exponential, yes.
This will quadruple. Now, then are we looking at that market? And not only is it quadrupling, you will have within that a larger set of people who are now, who are the haves. They are aspiring, they want something and so on. So I don't want to say the number will be more than quadruple, but then that, I think, needs many more players, including incumbents, fintechs and so on, to provide and meet this one. You asked a question earlier, growth opportunity for India, and then we secured into this. And how do we meet growth? I would look at it very simply, and it has become now very clear. One, as I said, corporate balance sheets have never been as clean as they are. And if you see carefully, the cash that they are throwing up every quarter is going into capital formation. It is not sitting idle there because they already repaid the banks. So it's now going into capital, but keeping an eye on demand. Nobody wants to create double capacity and wait 8 years for it to get consumed. So they are probably adding 20-25% capacity, expecting 10-15% growth, and always carrying some 10% surplus. And most of it can be done through what I call balancing equipment and typically brownfield. And where necessary, certain basic building blocks you need to steel, cement, you need fresh capacity. That is being built. So I think that is happening. At the other end, you got banks. It's also clean, a lendable capacity. You talk to a banker frankly today, he'll say my corporate demand is below 5%, but my retail demand is what's driving the growth. Then there's another aspect which are not still factored in, and I think is going to be probably the biggest driver of growth, and that is the capital market through the debt route. The equity route is already happening.
Yes.
But debt route, what was not happening 25 years back, why say the development banks had to change to be commercial banks, because we had no access to long-term bonds. Today, banks have that access, corporate India has that access. And clearly, on the other side, people need assets of long maturity, whether it is insurance or pension and so on. So I think we are in the midst of a flux where a whole new stream of financing is now available and is being channeled. See, all this will, I think, driving growth at 8% is not a challenge in terms of funding.
Can you just develop this point more? Would that be NABFID's catalytic role?
100% it would be NABFID's catalytic role, and I'm sure there will be other institutions like NABFID also which could channel. There could be other institutional, long-term debt raisers to fund a particular sector of infrastructure financing. If you look at in the past, it was basically a change in policy or a change in this which put a brake, and also at some end of the spectrum, adherence to contracts was
not there.
Now you have made it absolutely. It's very difficult not to adhere to these standards. And I think NHAI has demonstrated that using this model you can now. I would think that now there will be a large number of private companies again coming back into say roads. See, ports, airports, telecommunication were already in the private hands and are growing well. I would think that these will be the next. And the roads were also there, but then the roads suffered. Power generation was there, but suffered. But now green energy is primarily coming. The majority of it is coming through the private sector. How? Because adherence to contracts is now enshrined in the way you do business. So that changes the ability of industry to raise money and the private sector to invest.
Do you think we still have some way to go in terms of our legal system? I mean, there is a slightly better adherence to contracts than the things that happened in 2005 to 2015. But still the courts are cluttered. The legal system is a maze.
Again, I will just look at the financial industry.
Even IBC, sir, we started with so much hope.
But as I see, if you've got clean balance sheets,
then you
will not have a need to go. See, that also was part of a structure where you borrowed from banks and leveraged yourself to a level which you should not have. And that correction has happened. And typical question that come to mind is, will it not happen again? I believe not, because you today have a clean balance sheet and you are throwing enough to create growth for yourself. So unless you do something rash and want to set up 10 different things, you can't grow. And I'm sure the banks are cautious on that sort of a thing. So I'm optimistic that we can put a number on growth and say this is the growth we want to happen, and it will happen today because everything has fallen in place. I think the trajectory is very clear.
Okay. Well, there's just one more doubt I had when we speak about digitization of finance. At least I worry, but maybe I would be glad if you say my worry is uncalled for. Do the people like GPay, Google, will they take the game away from us? They have the monopoly of payment data now.
So they are, let me look at UPI as a whole. UPI is a facilitator.
Yes.
So any participant there basically is the role of a facilitator. And in an evolving technology context, somebody else is building a platform which is as efficient or better than the incumbent. I'm not naming any single incumbent. So every incumbent has to be aware that there is somebody racing me, and need to provide, need to build. And as long as any of these intermediaries are doing good to India, I think we should embrace it as long as it suits India. And I think at this moment, all these players are providing us something which lets us run at speed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamath, for joining us
Thank you.
in this Independence Day edition. Thank you very much for watching.